Welcome to Discovering Justice. My name is Lucy Rivera, and I am the host of this program. This program can be viewed online at www.discoveringjustice.net, and that will appear at your screen every time we mention the program. Today, we're humbled and grateful to have a wonderful guest with us, Sheriff Andrea Cabral.
Hello, Lucy.
Welcome, and Sheriff Cabral.
We are old friends.
We are old friends. The sheriff is, Attorney Andrea Cabral is the 30th Sheriff of Suffolk County Sheriff's Office, but she is the first female to take this position in the whole history of Massachusetts. And we are proud of that and thrilled to have the first female be a Sheriff of Suffolk County, House of Corrections Department. Sheriff Cabral took office in 2004 and was re-elected in 2010. She followed a long career at the District Attorney's Office from, I believe, 1999 to 2000.
87 to really to 2002, but that's 2 DA's offices and
Yes.
1 stint in the Attorney General's office, but over a lengthy period of time.
Lengthy career as a law enforcer.
Right.
And you are the author of a book.
I am.
Yes, and tell us
On
about your
restraining
book.
orders. That was
Yes.
back, I think it was in 1993, but I could have this wrong, could be 97. There was no, the Massachusetts Continuing Legal Education
Yes.
is where all lawyers get a lot of their information,
Yes.
legal information, informative information, treatises, manuals. They didn't have a manual on restraining orders that are sought and filed after, pursuant to 209A, domestic violence restraining orders. And I was asked to write it, to write their first manual, so I did that back then, and it's now updated by people other than myself, but the original was written by me. I'm grateful that they can always find editors to update it.
Yeah, so women pioneers who are contributing in the legal field. You're also the recipient of the Eisenhower Award.
Yeah, I'm an Eisenhower Fellow, and that Eisenhower Fellowships, it really was literally created by President Eisenhower back in the 40s, and he believed that you could gain as much communication and collaboration between countries if you sent emerging leaders from their countries to other countries to learn about how those countries did certain things than you could with diplomats, as much with regular people as with people who are diplomats. So Eisenhower Fellowships is basically an organization that sends emerging leaders abroad and also every year hosts large groups of international fellows, people coming from other countries to learn about the United States. So in 2007, I went to Australia for a month, and I studied their criminal justice system. It was a wonderful, wonderful trip. I learned a great deal.
And all this experience brings us to have Sheriff Cabral as the Sheriff of Suffolk County, but not without its challenges. Sheriff Cabral, when you took office, the Sheriff's Department needed a strong leadership and reform. Tell us what was that when you first took office? What were the changes you saw? I mean, what were the things that you saw to change?
Well, there were always, it's a very big department, so let's start there. People don't realize that how large the Suffolk County Sheriff's Department is. They don't think of it as a large place, mostly because we occupy the smallest geography of all the other county sheriff's departments. We have only the House of Correction on Bradston Street and the Nashua Street Jail, and you get from one to the other by going through the tunnel, and that's basically what it is. Not a lot of land. We're not occupying a huge amount of space, and so people think that we're not as large as we are, but we're actually the 30th largest sheriff's department in the country, and there are over 3,000 sheriff's departments in the country. So we have a lot of people coming through our doors, both at the jail and the House of Correction. And so when you're dealing with that many inmates and detainees, and you're also dealing with staff, over 1,000 people work at the Sheriff's Department. People also don't know that. Large numbers of people, you have to have really kind of tight management, and you really have to have a solid management team. You have to have policies in place around hiring and training and discipline and promotions that are level playing field policies. In other words, everyone should have a fair shot at getting a job in the department. If they get through the hiring process the way they're supposed to, everyone should have a fair shot at getting a promotion if they meet the criteria for that. Everyone's discipline should be meted out fairly and in an understandable way, so they know exactly what consequences are for certain things and how people might be held accountable. If you put those things in place, you really raise the department generally. And everyone feels as though their career is in their own hands, And whether they rise and fall in that career is largely up to them, that there aren't very many external things having an impact on their ability to be successful. And those are the fundamental management principles that I have put in place and have tried to maintain over the last 9 years. And they've helped considerably, I think, in the department in terms of morale and people's understanding of the importance of the job.
It's impressive that Massachusetts holds the 30th largest Sheriff's Department office in the whole 300
Right.
departments in the United States, and that it's a credit to you, Sheriff Cabral. I think it's a lot of work and it's incredible. And talk to us about the challenges that you're facing every day with this big machine.
Well, people don't maybe think of it this way, but people who are either held on bail and can't make bail, or people who are doing a sentence committed to the House of Correction, these are people who are living in these two buildings, the jail and the House of Correction. So you have a situation where you have a large number of people whose liberty has been taken from them for good reason, and you have a large number of people who are supervising those people. It's kind of an interesting human dynamic. That's a challenge inherently. Now, people also, I think, don't realize that corrections is a unique job. You don't really have, in a democracy like we live in, you don't have competent adults in charge of other competent adults. It just really doesn't happen, except when someone's committed a crime and is being held on bail or committed to a sentence. It just carries with it a lot of challenges. There are things you have to provide inmates and detainees. Constitutionally have to provide them, and have to provide them just as a matter of decency and morality. And there are things that you need to do for your staff and for the people who work there to create a better work environment for them. And so, you know, it's an ongoing process. The great thing about working there for me has been that every success sort of breeds another success. And even when things don't go very well, they always present an opportunity for us to step back, look at what the problem is, and sort of tackle it from all sides and create a comprehensive and sustainable solution to it. So it's been a very interesting 9 years, and it's worked very, very well. I'm very pleased. I have great people working with me, so they make it easy for me.
And speaking of assistance and the success, what are the changes that you implemented when you arrived to the office?
They were largely around hiring and training and around discipline and promotions. But it was also a great deal of effort was spent on inmate programs and looking at programs that were effective, keeping what was effective, and ending what wasn't effective, and then creating new programs, particularly around the issue of reentry, because that over the last 9 years, the way that we transition people from incarceration back into communities has become a very big deal when you realize that you can't expect necessarily that people are going to be successful if they don't leave an institution with any better skills or any better tools, or are no more adept at handling their lives when they're released as when they came in. So you really do have to do something about that. Otherwise, you're always going to have a high recidivism rate.
Yes.
And it'll just be even more of a revolving door than it currently is. So.
And that's a big problem, Sheriff Cabral, for people who actually work in this field. How do you, what do you propose, or what do you think are the best ways to prevent people from falling into this kind of lifestyle recidivism, which is committing a crime again once you are released?
I think it's important what we're doing currently in corrections. You know, you will find all of the sheriffs in Massachusetts are involved in inmate programming, and a lot of sheriffs are doing excellent. Actually, Massachusetts sort of leads the nation in models for some very good reentry programming, and we're nationally recognized for that. My real answer to that, though, is while I think that corrections, there's a definite and critical role for corrections to play in reentry and stemming the tide of recidivism, really, we need to be much more focused on prevention. The things that create the people that we see happened way before they got to us. It's true. These are things that happen in childhood and over the course of childhood and in early teen years, and have a lot to do with what is or is not going on in an individual's home, the things that are going on that shouldn't be and the things that aren't going on that should be. And until we sort of are able to put more resources into looking at that and embrace that a little more, we're always going to pay a lot more on the back end for people once they're in. Once people get to the point of being incarcerated, they cost a huge amount of money as well as present a threat to public safety. And we really need to start thinking about how we effectively and more frequently shift those resources on the front end around education and Head Start and parenting, which is plays a very big role in this, so that we're not seeing as many people come through our doors as we are currently seeing. And so that said, what we do once we have people is we assess everyone. We do an assessment of every person that comes through our door to see what their deficits are. Overwhelming amounts of substance abuse, both alcohol and drug. So we treat those things and have recovery programs and substance abuse treatment programs. People are grossly undereducated. Probably about half of the people we have dropped out of school before graduation. There are lots of mental health issues, overwhelming sort of numbers of mental health issues, which create an internal security problem for us as well as the expense of psychotropic drugs. So we target those things. We target building people's skills, increasing their education, getting them stabilized on medication, so that when they transition out, they have some better opportunities. But we really should be looking more toward the early parts of their life to find the real answers to these things.
And Sheriff, you said that the level of literacy of the people who are, you're screening the people, and that in itself, it's a big project, screening them, finding out what is it that they need. What is the percentage of people who are illiterate for people who are in pretrial stages?
I think the average reading level is probably about 7th grade. The average level for math is about 5th grade. That's the average of all inmates and detainees. Now, there are people who have some college education, and I'm sure we get our few college graduates. But they are balanced out by the people who are functionally illiterate. Perhaps who have either made their way through the system without actually ever having learned anything or been taught anything, and people who have dropped out and just don't have, and it's not just the impact of not having book learning, as they call it, that level of it. What education does for you is it opens up your world. The more you know, the better educated you are about things like history and science, the more you can see yourself in the world doing things greater than what you're currently doing. So to me, the real value of education and the detriment of not having an education is the narrowing and the almost arrested development, the stifling of a person's world. Most people who are doing the people who are doing the things that land them in jail can't see beyond the world that they're currently in. And education is a way to help people to see that they could do better.
Sheriff, also, there are other, not only education, but also the money that they make, that they don't have a job, or the economic background of the family that they don't have. What do you see? I'd like to talk about education also and address what your view is in the terms of relationship of education and the people who end up being incarcerated. But what would you see would be a beneficial, what are the programs, what do you think society should do to prevent people from becoming in contact with the legal system and criminally, or becoming
Well, it's really difficult to get a job and maintain a job if you're very undereducated. Most places look at least for a high school diploma. Now, we offer, in addition to all the reentry programs we have core programming, educational program. We do special education for people who have a SPED plan and are over the age of 21. We offer GED classes. We offer EDP classes, which really is a high school diploma. But we also have basic adult literacy, basic reading, those kinds of things for people who really are not going to get to the high school graduate level, but we want them to be able to function in society and read and write well enough sort of to get by. And then we run the gamut. We go all the way to the other end with college courses. There's definitely a relationship between education and the ability to get a good job that you can support yourself on.
Right.
But in a tough economy, there are lots of people who have jobs, who don't have jobs, and who aren't necessarily coming off of a custody situation.
Right.
It makes it even more difficult to get jobs in a down economy when you also have the baggage of having been incarcerated.
Criminal record.
Yeah.
Sheriff Cabral, what's the relationship of the people who actually end up in your facility as incarcerated, and the fact that they don't have education? Do you see that that's probably more likely the case?
I think it's not a good thing. I mean, I'm sure that there are plenty of people who lack education who never ever see the inside of a jail.
Right.
But it is just another detriment, another deficit when you are in jail and you are undereducated, because now in addition to having to explain the lack of education when you're seeking a job, you're also going to have to explain where you've been and whether or not you've been incarcerated. And all of those things give employers impressions about people, rightly or wrongly. So I've been focusing a lot of my energy on trying to get people to understand what it really does to you to be incarcerated, the impact that that will have on your life. And unfortunately, it happens in many people's lives when they're young. And when you're young, you don't think about the long-term impact of anything you do, quite frankly. I remember being young. I remember not thinking about those things, right? And people don't realize that everything that you do today becomes part of the continuum of your life, and if it's negative, at some point you're going to have to, it might hold you back, and at some point you're going to have to explain it. And so we've really been sort of focusing on keeping people away from that. We have programs like Jailbreak, where we have at-risk youth that are coming in, and we're showing them what really, a real tough look at what it's like to be in jail. If you're 13 and you're 14 and you think it doesn't matter if you're stealing now and if you're skipping school, well, there are a bunch of people in my jail who are grown adults who want to tell you that you are where they were and this is where you will be soon. And they do that. We have inmates that, pretrial detainees that volunteer to have real hard conversations with some of these kids and really show them. If you've been watching MSNBC's lockup program, Boston's featured this season. So you'll see, it'll be all about the Suffolk County Sheriff's Department, but you will see on one of those episodes, they will show you Jailbreak. And it makes an impact. The kids are definitely at-risk kids who are involved in organizations and groups. Afterward, they have to write about the experience, and we get some very revealing essays from them about how they feel having gone through the process, and we hope it has a deterrent effect.
And that's part of the prevention programs that your office is implementing. I find that commendable, and that program is definitely beneficial. Can you talk to us about the other programs that you've thought about for prevention?
Well, we do a great deal of work in the schools and with kids. So one of our programs is called the Choice Program. We call it the Choice Program because it's about choices. And so we have officers who volunteer, and they are trained in a particular curriculum that is about talking to kids at the middle school and high school level about choices, making good choices, having respect for yourself, showing respect for others, what happens in the absence of good choices, how you can be in a group of people and maybe not even be the primary actor in a negative activity, but you're there and you're sort of encouraging it to happen by your presence, and you're maybe participating a little. You are just as responsible as the person who's the primary actor, and you can lose just as much from your life simply by being there. And we actually added to that curriculum a piece on civics, because we realized that these officers were going into the schools, and they probably do anywhere from 70 to 75 trips to Boston schools every single year. They get a lot of requests for command performances, repeat performances. So they go back to some schools several times. The kids love them. They do an excellent job, but we realize that we're representing government, telling them what government does, but they don't really know what government does. So now that the officers are talking to them about how government functions, the three branches of government, and what the criminal justice system, how that fits in, it's a very successful program, and the kids really enjoy seeing someone in uniform who's an authority that they can have a real conversation with.
You're watching Discovering Justice, and our guest today is Sheriff Andrea Cabral, Sheriff of Suffolk County, the first female to hold this position in Massachusetts, and the 30th Sheriff of Suffolk County. My name is Lucy Rivera, and this program can be seen at www.discoveringjustice.net. Sheriff Cabral, you have men and women in your facility. Now, I know that you were the first one to address the needs for women in this facility. Tell us about that. Tell us about your initiatives.
Well, women, their sort of path to jail or incarceration is a little bit different from men. But the women are also a lot more forthcoming when you ask them, which we did, about all of the issues in their life that lead to some of the self-destructive and proactively destructive behavior that's in the crimes that they commit. I didn't like the fact that the women were, it wasn't just that they were treated the same as men. It wasn't even like that. Before I got there, they were treated differently and had fewer privileges. And there was no really good reason for it, other than they just were a much smaller population within a larger population of men. And they're not housed together, but. So we decided that we would create gender-specific programs because we wanted to create a reentry program that was going to make women successful and would be targeted to the things that women felt they needed. Most people will understand this. Women are very relationship-based in their dealings. They themselves told us, we will do well in a program that addresses the levels of trauma around domestic violence and sexual assault that we experience, around self-esteem, because we clearly know that we have self-esteem issues, and how we manage the anger around the trauma that we... Exactly. So, and they also wanted to have programs where they felt like they were establishing a relationship with the facilitator of the program, and were also establishing relationships with the other women in the program, because it's a collective strength that they're seeking to support them and make them feel positive. And so we created programs that do that, and we have unbelievable partners on our female reentry program, the South End Community Health Center and Project Place. And you know, Project Place does jobs and housing, and the South End Community Health Center is encouraging women to look at their medical health and their mental health and to integrate good medical and mental health into their everyday lives, with the hope that they will also do it for their children.
So that, and tell us more about the programs for female. I know that that is one of the programs, but I know you were the innovative of this in the Suffolk County Sheriff's Department. Talk to us about those programs.
Well, you know, the interesting thing to me when we were doing the programs, if by statute, if you participate in certain prison programs, you are entitled to so many days off of your sentence a month. You can't get more than 7 days a month off of your sentence. When we surveyed the women, this was interesting, versus the men, 85% of the men said that the reason that they were getting involved in the programs was because they wanted time off their sentence. Only 15% of the women responded that that was why they wanted to be in the programs. That means 85% of the women wanted to be involved in productive, positive programming for the benefit that the program would give them, not just because they would be rewarded with time off their sentence. So what we see with the women is a little bit different in terms of why they want to get involved in programs. And keep in mind, many of them have children. You know, sometimes they're incarcerated and their rights to be parents are in the process of being terminated, you know, by DSS, often for I would say all the time, really, for very, very good reason. And they're struggling to get their lives in order, and they're struggling to figure out how they're going to become or rejoin their families and maintain as the primary caretaker for these children. So our programs are, you know, we changed the way our visiting room looks. We made it a more child-friendly, less institutional environment so that they could begin the process of reunification and rebonding with their children in a place that doesn't look like I'm going to see mommy in jail. So sometimes it's the little things, it's the big programs too, the big reentry programs, the other programs that we have, but sometimes it's the smaller things too, that if you really are trying to reintegrate somebody back into their family, back into the community, you try to establish a sense of more normalcy than what a regular institution might provide.
Interesting, Sheriff Cabral. We don't have a lot of time, 1 minute left, but I'd like to hear, do you feel that there is an increasing female population in Sheriff, and why would you feel that that is the case?
When I first got there were only 45, and that's, I think I'm at 150 now. Yeah, women, I mean, you know, women, it's an equal opportunity, fairly equal opportunity society. We shouldn't expect that women would be doing well in all areas, but that we wouldn't also increase our numbers in crime. It is what it is. It is what it is. So you do find that, but a lot of it is tied to addiction, and there are just as many women, if not more, that are addicted to drugs and alcohol and are doing a lot of things they shouldn't be doing in furtherance of that habit, and getting arrested and are doing time for it.
And so, do you feel that it's maybe more women that are susceptible to certain things, perhaps?
I think a lot of people self-medicate with drugs, and I think if you've experienced, I mean, the statistic that the Department of Justice has is that 70% of all women who are incarcerated have experienced sexual assault or domestic violence before the age of 17.
Interesting.
If you haven't dealt with that, you probably do, like everybody who tries to alleviate pain with heroin or cocaine, whatever it is, it's probably what you're doing. And before you know it, you are an addict. Nobody, I think, goes into it thinking they're going to be an addict, but that seems to be the inevitable result. And then you have to deal with that.
Interesting, Sheriff. Well, Sheriff, you have we have a great leader of the Sheriff Department of Suffolk County, and
Thanks.
it is a big, tremendous management effort. And thank you for being in our program.
Sure.
We've run out of time, but to all of you, thank you so much for watching Discovering Justice. And today, again, we had Sheriff Andrea Cabral, attorney from Suffolk County Sheriff's Department. And my name is Lucy Rivera, and I am your host. And please visit our webpage at www.discoveringjustice.net. It's on your screens now. And you can also email me at lucy.rivera@discoveringjustice.net. I'd love to hear your comments, and I definitely want to hear what other topics are of interest to you. Thank you for watching.